let me go. And he started after me. And just at that moment, I heard an explosion in my cockpit. My rudder was shot away. My boot was torn. And my airplane lost speed. I, in turn, rolled the airplane over as steep as I could to get to a cloud level beneath me, trying to get there before the 109 could finish me off. I was frightened. That night, I didn't sleep very well, thinking of what could have happened that didn't happen.
German fighter pilots face a dual menace. Guns from both the fighter escorts and the heavily armed bombers. Fritz Loskite, Luftwaffe, 68 kills.
Wenn Sie hinter einer Viermotorigen fliegen, da schießen auf einer...
Think about fighting the four-engine bombers. They had 4 machine guns in the tail, 4 machine guns on top, 4 machine guns on both sides. That's 3 times 4 machine guns, 12 machine guns, all firing at one fighter. Then you've got 3 neighboring aircraft, each with a dozen machine guns. That's 36 guns shooting at you. You don't see anything but tracers.
At the beginning of 1944, American strategic air power becomes awesome. A new aircraft is introduced that will change the outcome of the war, the P-51 Mustang.
We got the P-51 Mustang, which had this extraordinary performance and this enormous range. 8.5 hours we used to fly in that plane.
James Goodson, 15 kills. In a P-51, Goodson leads the first escorted mission over Berlin.
It was a remarkable plane, and of course, being right over Berlin, I think Goering said when he saw our red-nosed Mustangs over Berlin, he knew that the air war was lost for Germany because we could escort the bombers.
As American bombers and fighters carry the air war to the heart of Germany, the Luftwaffe sends fully 2/3 of its fighter force to stop them. In the skies over Germany, the stage is set for bloody conflict. Berlin becomes an inferno. Intense bombing shatters the city, while vicious dogfights rage overhead. Many aces will be born in these battles, and many will die. Jack Ilfrey, 8 kills.
We got jumped by what we estimate a 50 to 60 gaggle of German fighters. I had a real good shot at an Me-109, and he burst into flame. Right at that time, somebody screamed on my radio, said, "Jack, look out. Somebody's right under you trying to ram you." And I thought, oh, no. And my right wing went across the cockpit of that Me-109, tearing off about 4.5 to 5 feet of it. And it knocked out that gas tank for that engine and threw me into a spin. Now that upsets your constitution.
I looked down and I could see the shadow of my airplane, and there was a great long trail of smoke following me. And so I knew something was wrong. And all of a sudden there was an explosion and fire started to come out through the cowling of the engine. And at the same time, the group leader called and said, "Watch it, boy, you're on fire." And as the last word I heard was fire as I was going over the side, and of course went over the side and bailed out.
Even among pilots lucky enough to make it home, the daily struggle for survival takes its toll.
At the end of a mission, whatever, I was always dead tired. I'd get back home and park the airplane, and I'd feel like lying down on the concrete. It's nervous exhaustion. I'm sure it's tension.
Between missions, a rare chance for young fighter pilots to relieve tension and blow off steam. For the Germans, there is no escape.
Hinzu kommt, dass es den
The Americans didn't know what burnt out meant. They flew for a limited period of time, and then they'd return home, whereas our pilots were constantly on duty. A service record of 500 to 600 sorties among those who survived was perfectly normal for us. But the Americans didn't have anything close to that many, not even close.
The winter of 1944 finds Germany reeling under the relentless onslaught of Allied air attacks. Bomber Command presses the advantage, sending armadas of 1,000 bombers and more to crush the German war machine. The Luftwaffe's fighter arm is stretched to the limit, trying to defend the German heartland. Hans-Joachim Jobs, Luftwaffe, 50 kills.
Zu der Zeit lagen keine deutschen Jäger mehr vorne.
At that time in the war, there were no more German fighter aircraft stationed on the Western Front. They had been pulled back to Berlin due to the American daylight bombing raids to protect Berlin against enemy attacks.
German defense increases in ferocity. Losses are heavy on both sides. Daylight raids are harrowing for the 10 men trapped inside a bomber. And the fighter pilots feel deeply for their big friends.
I, as a fighter pilot, seeing those bombers disappear in clouds of black flak kind of upset me, knowing that there was 10 men on each one of those bombers. And here I am, and a fighter, I can evade and get around, and but they couldn't. They had to stay on their course and drop their bombs.
When I saw big bombers go down, I felt terrible, because you knew there were 10 men in each one of those, and we watched a lot of them go down.
By the spring of 1944, the Allies achieve air supremacy. Bombers and fighters in ever-increasing numbers roam over Germany, driving the Luftwaffe to the ground.
Die Amerikaner kreuzten auf.
The Americans would send out as many as 100 or 120 escorts to protect the 4-engine bombers, and we had at most 20 or 30. Very seldom were we equally matched. Usually, they had numerical superiority, and their escort pilots were mainly excellent.
And that's air supremacy, so that there's just no way that those poor bastards could continue to fight. There's just no way. They still had good pilots. They were still producing as many airplanes as they had been, but they were running out of pilots.
Gunther Rall, Luftwaffe, 275 kills.
Der letzte Einsatz mit Feindberührung war eigentlich am 12.
My last mission encountering the enemy was on May 12, 1944. I was engaged with a large American fighter, a Thunderbolt. I was successful at shooting it down. Then I was chased from a height of 8,000 meters. My plane was totally shot up. My thumb was shot off, and I had to get out. This was my last encounter.
General Adolf Galland, Luftwaffe, 104 kills.
Göring so überworfen war über die Einsätze in der Reichsverteidigung.
There came a time when Göring was expressing himself about the alleged lack of bravery of German fighter pilots. He cursed the fighter pilots and claimed that they didn't deserve their decorations. So I was very angry. I tore my decoration from my collar and banged it on the table.
By late spring 1944, the Luftwaffe is all but destroyed. The major industrial centers of Germany's heartland lie in ruins.
The worst experience I had was the bombing of my wife's hometown, Magdeburg. I was flying above and knew that my family was down there. Magdeburg was a burning inferno. It was a horrible experience. I saw the destruction of German cities and realized that with this much devastation on the ground, then Germany could never prevail and win the war. I realized that we were fighting only to postpone the end of the war, but a victory was now unthinkable.
Air supremacy is won at heavy cost. 40,000 Allied airmen die in combat over Europe. The big friends and their long-range little friends will continue their furious assault until Hitler's once feared and mighty Third Reich becomes a wasteland.